Hey, how you guys doing? This is going to be part one of the review and critique for your focus stack assignments. The truth is, these may go pretty quickly. You guys did an excellent job, particularly with the specifics of the assignment, creating a focus stack able to increase the depth of field for a shot. So, pretty much across the board, you guys did that really well. Y'all got good grades. So, if I make any comments about things, it's probably going to be stylistic or aesthetic in terms of the images. You see, you guys have done the worst possible thing to a verbose instructor, is that you haven't left me with much to say because the shots are looking pretty good. So we may end up going through this fairly fast. I'm assuming it may take two parts, but I don't know. It depends on how fast we can get through these. Here's our first shot. Good old Charlie Brown and Snoopy. They're just taking time to dream a little. What a great idea. The focus stack is great. The only thing I would probably do is try to get rid of some of this distracting background in it. So I'd pull this down as much as I could. I think we can still figure out what it says with a little of that. We've got Linus and his blanket in the background. I think this would make a reasonable horizontal, and horizontal shots tend to be more peaceful anyway because they're more like landscapes and that type of pastoral shot. So this would be my suggestion for it. But I think you did a nice job with it. Good deal. In this shot, again, we have a pretty good use of depth of field, of focus stacking, from the jar of flowers to the little flower part in between to the clock in the background. Nice focus stack. Again, my only suggestion would be, if this is a somewhat metaphorical, surreal image, are we talking about the passage of time somehow with these flowers in the water? There's a lot of potential in here for storytelling, but we've also got a lot of stuff that is distracting. If this were a plain curtain or sheer background without being able to see through it, I think this would be a whole lot better. Since it's not, then I'm going to want to get rid of as much of it as I can and bring this down into a tighter shot, hopefully so we can avoid this. The ideal thing would be to have this jar larger in the foreground, having shot it perhaps with a large or a wide-angle lens, rather. We could attempt to do that. I'm going to do this very, very quickly with a lasso tool just to show you one way that we might approach this. If I were doing this for real, I would try to be much more careful with this mask to save me the cleanup issue that this sloppy is going to create. So I'll do Control C to place this selection on the clipboard or to copy it, and I'll do a Control V to paste it, and what that does is paste it onto a new layer where the only thing on the layer is what I had selected before. So, for example, I can come in and move this around a little. But what I actually want to do to make a point about how this might have been shot is to come in and scale it up. If I can keep this highlight on the table in about the same spot, I can make this pretty believable. And now all I would have to do is I'll go ahead and hit enter to take it. I would normally do this with a layer mask because it would be so much easier to clean up the inevitable mistakes I'm going to make doing this. But for right now, I'm just going to use the eraser tool. Come down to a small brush. I want it to be, 100% is okay. I want it to be a soft edge. We'll bring it down. And now what I would do is come through and as carefully as I can erase that part of the background that I picked up with my sloppy selection. And see what I can do to make that glass appear bigger in the image. So there are all kinds of things you could do to this, including now coming through and making it even bigger. The only thing we've got to watch out for is it's a little crooked. And we need to keep this highlight within a believable area like that. So we can get pretty creative with this. We can even come over until we start exposing the bottle behind it. We can even create a little bit of overlap with that clock and now give some spatial release to this. So we have quite a bit of option that we can play with here. What a delightful little mechanical device. And given the size, the dime is perfect to show us how tiny this thing really is. You're going to have to, in an email, tell me what this really does. It's an amazing little device, and it's obviously very small, with some kind of worm gear to be moving things in and out. Fascinating piece, and you did a really nice job of it. So I'm going to go and pass on by because there's really not much to say. This is really well done. What a clever use of color you've got here with the green of the cactus against the red, magenta-ish red color of the material in the foreground. This is a very nice job. I might turn this into more of a square, mostly to really emphasize the squat nature of that cactus. But I think this is very good. This is one of the few I would not vignette the edges because I think this fairly flat background makes this round cactus really stand out. We could boost the contrast a little bit. We could make it a little snappier, but I think this works really well as it is. So with a little bit of cropping. Again, very nice job in the focus stack. It's very crisp, very sharp. No pun intended. Well, somebody's about to lose their marbles in this shot. This is very cleverly done on the high gloss surface. I assume this is like black plexi or black glass or some kind of mirrored surface, and that's what's creating our multiple images here, which are very interesting. If you'll notice, each one is a little different than what it's reflecting because each of the marbles has become a lens in itself, but what that lens sees depends on the angle through which you are seeing it. And here, this reflection is from a different angle than we're seeing this. So it's fascinating to see the optics involved in something like this. So it's very clever. Again, very nice use of focus stacking, clever shot. Did a really good job here. There's just not a lot to say about it. You're killing me here. God, once again, this is a very nice still life. It's quiet, it's calm, the colors work, the modeling in the background, the out-of-focus background is just perfect to give some depth to it. If it were a flat gray, it just would be dead and dull, but this really works. You guys go out and hire some ringers to shoot this for you this time? I mean, this is extraordinary stuff. Very nice. The only thing I would do is maybe add a little more density in here. You're just beginning to blow that out. I almost never burn with the burn tool, but in this case, because it's quick and fast and I may be able to prove a point with it. We'll set this up. Put just a little more detail in there. Well, that's why I don't use the burn tool. All right, I will take the time to do this one right. So let's do layer, layer. We're going to make this an overlay. We'll fill it with gray. We'll say OK. Now we have this gray extra layer over here. We use black for our brush. I definitely don't need 80%. And I want to do this much smaller. There we go. Can you see how much better that worked than using the burn tool? It was almost worth having to do twice just to show that. All right, again, beautiful job. Very nice. Well, the focus stack is done really well. I'm not sure exactly what to make of the topics, and the one interesting thing is this vehicle, in between this sharp vehicle and this sharp vehicle, is not sharp. It's soft. So I think what happened is you missed one of the required shots from this foreground to the background. It's incredibly easy to do. You get to watching for that area of focus as it moves into the background. You look at this. This vehicle is pretty much hidden behind the van, and then you see this, and you just overlook this. It gets missed in the overlap of depth of field. So I think you went through and did almost everything right. It's just missing a frame that would go in here. So you've got to be very, very careful when you're doing focus stacking to make sure that you don't miss something. You're better off with too many shots at too short an increment than you are jumping over something and getting it like this, where you're missing an important part in the middle. So the only other thing I would do is I would get rid of this up on top because it's really distracting. So I would take as much off as I could with a crop. And then I would take the rest of this by using the clone tool. And then it's much cleaner. I've got to watch for things that are happening in the borders. It's too easy to get high centered right in the center and forget that these edges provide the viewer with the limits of your universe. It's got to work. You've got a strong movement going this way. Don't proportionally crowd the front of it and leave the back of it with too much room. Well, this is an interesting shot of the bike. Again, this is a beautifully done focus stack from front to rear. Bike against the bushes. It's a clever concept. Interesting looking bike. I don't think I've seen one quite like this. Definitely looks like it's ready for a mountain trail. I'm assuming it's a mountain bike. But it's sharp, it's crisp. Very nice job. Good job. Again, unfortunately, don't give me much to say or play with. It's fun to play with other people's stuff, so when you don't give me that, then I just have to say, well, that's nice, and go on to the next one. Well, as I put in my comment to the photographer, I didn't know that sangria came in bottles this small or that you could bottle high voltage at all. The only issue I would have with this is that you're looking at it in kind of the shortest possible way, meaning with the least amount of depth of field. had you created this angle a little more steeply and were looking down the line, then you would create something that the focus stack would really be necessary for. So this works. It got the result that we're after. Aesthetically, it creates a fairly shallow shot. It definitely worked. I'm assuming you must have done this on purpose to add this green stripe against this yellow background, the yellow providing all of this spill light onto the shoes, and then having the little jade figure in here. I don't know, is this Buddha? Is it Hotai? Who is this figure? We do need a little more exposure on these black shoes. Things that are dark really absorb light very fast. And I'm assuming I'm going to pretend like you told me that you left all this space to put the ad copy for all this in. Otherwise, there really is no particular point in it. But let's see what we can do to lighten that up. So if we make a screen layer, oh yeah, look at all the stuff in there from our screen layer. Now this is much too bright. So we come down and we'll do an inverted layer mask. So we'll hold down the Alt key, click on the layer mask icon. Now we want to work with a white brush. 30% is enough to start with, and we'll let us start painting over our dark shoes here until we can lighten them. You can see this is still gray. I haven't painted all the way through that layer mask. I'm going to raise the opacity just to make this faster. But I would normally work at trying to just build up to it. I want to be able to separate those shoes from their shadow on the floor. What I'm avoiding is the little figurine as much as possible. So now we can see the shoes a little better, and then you could decide as the artiste, do you want to straighten this line, which I would probably recommend, and do you want to get rid of all of this yellow, or is there really something that's going to be placed in there? So here we have these two pawns squaring off. I'm assuming the various kings were too afraid to go out and do battle themselves, so they sent out these two warriors to go do it for them. So they're nose to nose. This is really well done. The focus stack is perfect. You did a great job lining these up. This is incredibly perfectly done. I mean, I'm stunned at how evenly you've made all of these rows. And because of the way these figures are made and painted, this almost looks more like an illustration than a photograph. So it's really an interesting job, interesting shot. I might consider getting rid of these highlights up right on the brickwork, as they're a little distracting, partially because they're unexplained, but mostly because they are lighter than what's going on around them, and that's drawing your eye to them. It might be possible to get rid of them with a spot healing brush, and we'll see. We'll try it on this one. That one is definitely easy. But it's picking up stuff that isn't there, so that isn't the right tool for us. We'd have to come back. Maybe what we'd have to do is clone this out or color it out. We can't crop it because it goes right in through there, the pieces. So we've got to be very, very, very careful. Maybe I'm going to try one more last little attempt to make the simplest tool work. If we're very careful and come through and take just a little piece at a time, we can almost make that work. We're still going to have to come back and clean that up. So there's no easy way to get rid of that. But other than that, I think this is really well done. Wow, you're killing me. Another nice product shot. Very nice. The only thing I would consider doing is knocking this highlight down. I didn't do that on the chess pieces because the fairly glossy glaze is just what it is. But I would consider knocking this down just a little bit. So let me zoom in on this. And the way I would do that is to pick up a real color, a light color, but a real one. Let's say right out of there. Pick up my brush and tell my brush to darken. And that means it will only paint on its own color or lighter. All I want to do is knock the high white shine off. I don't want to get rid of a highlight. So if I go through there, I can now leave a highlight, but get rid of the brilliance of it. And that way, the brightest thing is going to be the face of this clock, and the highlight doesn't take away from it. Nice shot. Another interesting job, but again, there is one small missing frame, and it's right here. You got this one sharp. You got the back of this one. I'll bet you were looking at this when you focused. You got this one sharp. You got this one sharp. But the front of this is out. There is a missing frame that should have been sharp to pick this part up. So, again, like we mentioned on that first one, this is a common but maddening problem when you're doing focus stacks, is not to get all of the frames you need. If you take too many and you realize it, and when you go through them and log those frames, if you've got duplicates, fine, you can delete them. But you need to make sure that you have every conceivable thing you need. Apart from that, this is an interesting use of color and tone between these pottery cups and the colors in the background. It's a very nicely done arrangement. So good job. Just be very careful about getting all of the parts that you need. Here again, we've got cute little animals, except this guy does not appear to be thrilled to be here. But it would have been nice if he were sharp. But we've got the focus stack that is picking up the middle character and the background character. So the focus stack itself worked. Your decision as an artist is this other than just, I've got to put some things from near to far and then try to focus on them? Is there another story to go on in here? Just remember, when you're shooting for assignments, don't just get hung up on the idea that all you have to do is technically solve the assignment. You can do that. You'll get your grade for it. But you are not going to become a better photographer until you get in the habit of trying to make every single shot you take be the best you can do, and to start interpreting, not narrating your scene. And then for our last shot, we've got this fascinating little safety pin. What a safe shot. It's really well done. Safety pins are tiny. Getting in this close and being able to get it all sharp, this is a perfect role for a focus stack. So good work. Good work. So this is very nice. It would be nice if this were toned down a little bit when you get into more advanced work and you get into a lighting class and you start learning about lighting shiny objects. You learn that you can't light the object. You light what the object is reflecting. And here it's reflecting something very, very bright. Adding a little bit of tone to that could give you more definition in it. But this is an excellent focus stack job. And that's all there was. You guys didn't give me much to talk about. Wow. You did really good. I'm very proud of you all. And I'll see you in the next module. Take care.